Aloha, I'm Malia Zimmerman, and this is News Behind the News. I want to welcome two guests today that have flown all the way from Washington, D.C. to be on this show. Well, I'm just kidding. They actually are here in Hawaii for a convention, but we're lucky enough to get them on the show. They're from the Heritage Foundation, which is the leading conservative think tank in the country. And I want to welcome today Rob Gordon, who is a senior advisor for the Heritage Foundation, and Heather Fitzmyer, who's with the Young Leaders Program. Thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Okay, well, tell me about why are you in Hawaii before we get into the Heritage Foundation.
Well, actually we came out to attend something called the American Farm Bureau Annual Convention. It's a huge agricultural convention. And one of the things I'm doing is I do outreach to folks we say are kind of conservative but may not know it yet. And one of the target markets there is people in natural resource industries, farming, ranching, mining, forestry, fishing. And attending this is a way to touch a lot of those people and talk to them a little bit about some upcoming projects Heritage has that may be of interest to them. And then when we're out here, it's a chance to kind of meet as many people as we can. It's a long distance. We don't get to do it often. So we've tried to piggyback as many meetings as we can, and Heather has other areas that she focuses on, young leaders, and I'll let her say a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I think in terms of farmers and ranchers, I mean, they're basically business people. So they should understand basic, free market principles, hopefully.
Yeah, I've worked with the farming, ranching, mining, oil and gas community for many, many years. And they're all kind of risk takers, And another thing that amongst those who are kind of family farmers, family ranches, there's a love of the land, and it's something they pass on the farm or the ranch from generation to generation. And that's also true of a lot of people who are in forestry, particularly in the southeast, where you have family timberlands. And they're not only well aware of the free market and how to take risks and rewards, but they also have a good understanding of natural resources and how to manage them in a manner where they can pass them on to the next generation in good order and usable and continually productive.
I want to ask Heather about the youth program. But maybe both of you, before we get into that, can give me a little bit of overview of the Heritage Foundation and what that is exactly, because it's got a tremendous reputation throughout the country, and a lot of you have many, many members. I know that. But what exactly is the Heritage Foundation, and maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Sure, happy to. Well, the Heritage Foundation is a think tank. We were founded back in 1973, so we're a public policy research organization. And we're nonpartisan, so we don't support or not support any political candidates or parties. And we're a nonprofit, so as you said, we're completely funded by individual donors. We currently have over 700,000 individuals from across the country who give money to support our mission. And at Heritage, our mission is to formulate and promote conservative public policy. So at the core of that are our 5 principles, which are limited government, individual freedom, free enterprise, traditional values, and a strong defense. So all the work that we do at Heritage Researching is centered to promote those core principles. So we work on everything from the economy and the debt to national defense. So it's really just an incredible team of researchers that we have at Heritage. And we also have a big team that Rob and I are part of, which are those outreach arms, where it's not just about writing the research, but it's about enacting those principles and making a difference in our country.
Well, I know when I listen to Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity, they always mention the Heritage Foundation and talk about your research. And of course, I publish your work weekly on Hawaii Reporter, and so that we can get the word out about some of the studies you're doing. But tell me about a little bit more to add to what she's saying about the Heritage Foundation, maybe some of the divisions or some of the main issues that you work on. Are there any?
Well, we divide everything up at Heritage under what we call our Leadership for America program, which is basically 10 different areas. Some of them include American leadership, or energy and environment, the rule of law, education, family and religion, and it's a way to channel the right issues to the right policy experts. And no matter what issue it is, we address it from the perspective that Heather mentioned, which is the limited government, free markets, traditional conservative ideas. And we produce policy analysis, hopefully with a pretty quick turnaround, with a primary target being Capitol Hill. But we are supported, membership supported, and we have over 700,000 members across the country today.
And you're very close to the Capitol location-wise, so you can basically walk there and meet with Congress.
Well, I jested, that it's a stone's throw from my office window, but I can't get the window open.
Right, okay. So in terms of maybe in the environment, this is a big issue in Hawaii. And we always care about our environment. We have, everything from the Sierra Club to Hawaii's Thousand Friends to different environmental groups, Blue Planet, putting out their agendas, one on one side or the other. But there's not really except with the exception of maybe Pacific Legal Foundation, there's not really there's not really a conservative environmental organization. Although Hawaii Thousand Friends does help with fighting, for example, our rail system, and does fight our electric company, which is a monopoly electric company, things like that. But what about
how do you go about and address the environment?
Right.
It's a huge. I often talk of it as kind of being the Eastern Front. It's something that conservatives have found to be very difficult to address. And I think that the reason it's been particularly difficult for conservatives to address is all the policies put forward are kind of inimical to everything that they believe. Limited government and individual freedom are two of the things that are quickly sacrificed when we adopt the policy prescriptions that come out of Washington. And the reason for that is they're kind of built on the worldview that the left has very successfully kind of established in our culture, that there's too many people, that the earth is kind of a shrinking pie, and when you touch natural resources, air, water, fish, wildlife, whatever, that they're inherently static and fragile and destined to degradation and decline. So the natural reaction is, well, what we got to do is we've got to inhibit the interaction between people and those resources. And we do that either through government ownership of the resources or heavy-handed regulation. And there's also this belief that a thriving economy creates more technology, and it just exacerbates the cycle. Well, when you accept those notions, then the policy prescriptions become bad. But all those notions kind of have one thing in common, from my perspective, and that is that they're wrong. And so what conservatives need to do is put out competing and more accurate ideas. And some of the most important ones, the first and foremost important in my mind, kind of all the others hang on, is that people are really the most precious and unique resource we have. And that's both a value statement and a principle. An environmental policy can't be good if it's bad for people, number one. And number two is people, through their creativity, hold the solutions to most of the problems we face. And when you start with that as a beginning point, then you look at the world a little differently, and you're able to use things like free markets and property ownership and technology and science in a better way to address some of the problems we face.
So you're working on some kind of big plan that you're going to unveil, in the next 3 months or so, about the principles for environmental policy.
Yes.
So maybe you can give us a little preview.
Yes, it's something I'm very excited about, and it really has kind of two parts. The first part is the principles, which I think kind of changed the terms of the debate. And there are 8 principles, and the first one I've mentioned already. And then the second one would be, for example, that natural resources are resilient and dynamic and given to wise management. And that really means that you can use and benefit from all of the natural resources I mentioned, but at the same time ensure that their quality and quantity are maintained for the benefit of future generations. So that'd be the second principle. 6 more, And then in concert with that, we'll put out several policy papers that kind of run the gamut. They'll address clean water, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Endangered Species Act, CO2 emissions, and several other subjects, private property, federal estate, and embed those principles that we've talked about in the front part. So really put forth conservative solutions as opposed to just saying, hey, that program's not working, it's a terrible thing that we got to stop. That may be important, but it's not the entire game. When
So
you're trying to
the
form
left
public
side of the
policy.
environment, the left's environmentalists have been getting their agenda out for so many years. How are you going to catch up?
Well, I always tell people public policy is water torture. It takes a long time. And the other thing I say is that if you don't know what your principles are, you're going to lose. You end up negotiating on your opponent's turf, and you either oppose them just outright, or today it becomes increasingly difficult to do that because the environment's kind of like, it's almost like a baby kissing issue. It's a free vote for a lot of folks. Right. They don't realize the negative consequences. So we're really going to be going out and planting a seed here and give people a way to think anew about the environment, a new worldview. And we view this as a long-term project. And then we'll be putting out the specific policies that will help guide our friends who are trying to enact these things. And I don't expect them to all be enacted overnight, adopted everywhere, but it's a step in the right direction that's not just a defensive one.
Now, I want to talk to you about more of the project that you're working on, that you mentioned you're working on together. But Heather, I wanted to ask you about the youth programs. You're talking about planting seeds, and now you're planting seeds in America's youth. What is it that you're doing with the youth programs?
Well, it's been great. Well, Heritage has had a long-established internship program pretty much since the start. We've grown and really taken the time to bring young leaders to DC and train them through our internship program. But a couple years back, we realized that really wasn't enough. Well, it's great to get these ambassadors trained up and sent back to their communities. We need to do more than just touch, 100, 200 students a year. So in 2004, Heritage created our Young Leaders Program, which really is that centralized effort to reach out to the next generation. So what I've been focusing on is growing that effort. We've done a lot on college campuses. One thing I've tried to do is build relationships with both students and professors. So there's a lot of great existing conservative organizations out there, like Young America's Foundation and the Leadership Institute. So we're not in the business of building college chapters, but we are in the business of working with every chapter that's out there. So you hear this great project that Rob's putting out. Well, we want all those students to be reading that and passing it along to their friends on campus. We've been handing out pocket constitutions on campuses across the country. So we want to take the great research that Heritage is doing and try to repackage it a little bit so we can reach a much wider audience.
Well, I noticed that Heritage is doing more blogging and more videos and things like that on the website. And is that part of the outreach to youth, or is that just a kind of a multimedia? Is that just the way of the world?
A little bit of both. So absolutely, we were the ones who created the Facebook page for Heritage. When I first pitched that with my team, it was a little bit of an uphill battle. Some people were weary of what this Facebook thing is, but now it's grown to not just reach youth, but a much wider audience, which is fantastic. We've played around with video web chats. We have a great team now that, you're right, produces videos all the time. So it's great that it can work for youth, but also for a wider audience, because I think a lot of the pithy videos we put out can do both.
Well, this is how much the world is changing. We recently had a big event here called APEC, which was the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference, and we had a briefing with the Secret Service, and the Secret Service actually started its own Twitter feed for the conference.
Right?
So the world's changing when we all have to keep up with the youth and the technology. That's for sure.
It's all just different ways to move information, though.
Exactly.
In the end. You're just trying to get ideas to people, and we've got to experiment and see which mediums are the best for different audiences. And clearly the markets Heather works with are going to be a little bit different than some of the older folks that we try to reach as well. So we've got a very people who very aggressively tweet, and we've got Facebook, and we've obviously got a huge web presence, and then you know, Heritage runs a lot of events on a daily and weekly basis. We have people coming and speaking. We have a couple of auditoriums, and those two typically are available for, you know, we know everybody can't come to Capitol Hill to see our events, so those are online, can be watched and downloaded after the fact. So, you know, I think these technological innovations have been great for conservatives and allowed us to kind of circumvent and get to people that we might not otherwise get to.
Now, in terms of the youth that you run into, do you see them being, I mean, how do you see them reacting to your ideas and policy, and are they creating their own, or is it more of a training ground for them? How does the program work?
It's a really big mix. So for our internship program, we're taking those self-identified, passionate conservative leaders on campus. We want to take those who are editor of their school newspaper, president of their pro-life, or whatever organization it is on campus. We want to take those leaders, train them up, give them even more resources, public speaking experience, resume writing experience while they're in DC, as well as the practical policy experience they get while they're part of our internship program. So our internship program is designed to train up conservative leaders. The other outreach I'm doing is to reach out, because there are a ton of young people who've never heard of Heritage or don't know there's this great movement out here talking about all those issues. So I'm trying to go out and reach them, but also reach those kids who are kind of in the middle. They've been a little duped on their campuses. You know, they have these natural principles for freedom and choice and opportunity, but they've really been duped by the left. So our goal is to start getting them thinking about issues in a different way, to say, if you're used to choice in all these places in your life, why don't you want it with healthcare, which is probably the most important decision you make? So we try to go out and pull them into the movement as well, or at least get them thinking about these issues, so they don't immediately just step in line with the left.
So if you can give a little picture, how do kids get involved with your program right now if they wanted to sign up to become part of your program?
Great. Well, the two best ways, Facebook, we already mentioned it. If you just go right on, type in Heritage Young Leaders Program, we'll pop right up. You can like us. I know all the young people know how to do that. So we post on there all the time. That's where we'll do the video web chats through. We keep you up to date on events going on around the country. So that's the easy one. And then we also do a weekly e-newsletter. So again, it's that way to not just show what's going on here, but with all the other great organizations around the country. So you can go onto our Heritage website, heritage.org/Young Leaders Program. So those are the two best ways to keep up to date and interact with Heritage online.
So now you're working on a program or a project together. Can you give a little, right? Is that right? You were saying in the beginning.
Mean the environmental
I'm not
project,
sure.
or coming over here? Or?
Maybe it was coming over here.
Well, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was really to come over to meet this agricultural. At this agricultural convention, and being in ER, it's always kind of an all hands on deck thing, because we've got people going all over the country doing all kinds of different events.
So it was a two-day event, right?
Yeah, that was a two-day event. That was Monday, Tuesday. For us it was. I think it continued with some other functions. But our real goal there was to meet as many people in the agricultural community as we could, and provide them information on a wide variety of issues. Being in external relations, we're out there kind of doing high-end or you know touching people in terms of the marketing. And folks in the agricultural community are not only going to be interested in what we're doing on the environment, but on a plethora of issues. Estate tax is a huge issue for them, and Heritage has been a leader in addressing or fighting against the death tax. And so that's something that's obviously very important to people who have huge amounts of property that's been in the family, and is they take big hits when it comes to the estate tax. In fact, you know, that tags into another issue that we work on, one that I particularly worked on a lot and will be addressing in the environmental program I mentioned, which is endangered species. I've had people tell me that, and people inside the Fish and Wildlife Service, that one of the biggest problems for this particular bird in the southeastern United States was estate tax. And I kind of couldn't understand why, but then they explained that, gee, you know, when it comes time and the land passes, people are essentially land poor in some instances, and they have to break up the property, put in strip malls or whatever it may be to pay the estate tax, and there goes the habitat for that bird.
That's true.
You know, when we're out here at an event like that, we're going to be dealing with, you know, many of the different programs we have in our Leadership for America initiative, whether it be energy and environment, or the rule of law, or of course these people, they're all touched by Obamacare. You know, that was probably one of the issues that we heard most from people. And then of course today, with the real profound challenges we face with regard to debt and deficit, everybody's interested in entitlements. And Heritage has a big effort out called Saving the American Dream, where we put forth a kind of comprehensive plan on how to address Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the tax system in a manner that eventually removes the debt and you know, first trims the deficit, but does it kind of systemically, holistically, if you will, rather than a snip here and snip there. So when we're out for an event like that, we're talking to people about all those different issues.
Have you noticed a conflict between, or I should say tension between the ranchers and the endangered species issue? Because I know in Hawaii, you know, we have endangered species come on land property, and then the government moves in to kind of take control of that, and it leaves the ranchers with sometimes problems with people accessing their property or losing kind of control of their property. Yeah. Is that an issue that is dealt with throughout the country?
Very much so, and huge, and a, you know, kind of a classical unintended consequence of policy. Having something rare and unique on a ranch or a family farm used to be kind of bragging rights. Over the course of my career, I can't tell you how many times a rancher or a farmer or a woodlot owner has come up to me and said, you know, they don't think this thing is in this county. But I can tell you, well, they keep that information to themselves out of fear that they're going to lose control of their property. And it's not an irrational fear. It happens all the time. There's an enormous number of species on the endangered species list. It's growing radically. And the administration is pushing adding hundreds more. And unfortunately, the conservation results have not been very impressive. It's kind of a one-way street. Things go on, but they don't come off. And from my perspective, it's been that way because it's basically been used as a land use control mechanism, whereby you can go on and say, well, you know, the government can say, you know, we'll let you to continue to use this portion of your property if, you know, and there's kind of a payola racket, if you will. You know, you don't use that 20%, then you can continue to use this 80%. Well, from my perspective, and I think from a classical conservative perspective, we pay people when we decide to create a national park. We pay people when we take away their property to build a highway. There really shouldn't be any difference when we as a society decide, hey, we need this piece of property to preserve the Karner blue butterfly or whatever it is. Fine. If we choose to do that, then we should all pay for it. We should not just pin it on the unlucky individual. It makes having that habitat a negative.
Right.
And a Fish and Wildlife Service official back in the 90s, mid-90s in Texas, these debates were intense. And he kind of summed it up saying, you know, there's something wrong here. If I have a rare metal on my property, the value goes up. If I have a rare bird, it goes down. And that's not what you want. That's not achieving anything reasonable.
That's true. And then it kind of encourages the ranchers to actually want to try to move the creatures off their property too. I've heard that as well.
You know, there's a famous saying, which is shoot, shovel, and shut up.
Exactly.
And, you know.
Yeah, and then that's why they become endangered, or more so.
The best anecdotal evidence of that I know of, and I believe this is pretty accurate, is that I mentioned Texas and that saying. Two of the birds that were particularly at the center of all the conflicts with landowners were called the black-cap vireo and the golden cheek warbler. And both of them tend to live in cedar trees. Well, during that time period, I'm told the price of cedar fence posts in Texas dropped dramatically. If you didn't have the cedar trees, you didn't have the bird, you didn't have the problem. And that's kind of tragic because people may have been harvesting what would have been suitable habitat only because of the act that was designed, for the ostensible purpose of taking care of those.
Right, the ironies abound, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So we need to rethink a lot of our environmental policies in that way, so they don't have this kind of unintended consequence. I'm from Washington. I'm here to help you, and at the end of the day, do more damage than good. It kind of violates the Hippocratic Oath, if you will.
So, we only have about a couple minutes left in the show, but I wanted to get from you the biggest issues right now that you're working on, the environmental issues at Heritage, the youth outreach, and then what are some of the other issues that people can look forward to learning about on through Heritage?
I think we'd both agree that our Saving the American Dream program is a huge focus of the Heritage Foundation. I mean, it's kind of like all the marbles or all the chips are on the table. We've got to make some very serious decisions in this country to remain leader of the free world and build that that dream of the shining city on the hill. We've got to address our entitlements programs. We've got to address our tax structure, and then obviously Obamacare is I think a grave kind of threat to our society and the way it's been structured. It's fundamentally alien, if you will, to the way Americans have lived and organized themselves for generations. So those are two huge issues. I think energy and environment, where we get it, are like also.
Yeah, and on the entitlements issue, one great thing, I talked at the front about how we're trying to repackage things. We've really done that for young people with the entitlements and the debt issue. We recently launched something called Slay the Beast, where we not only walk through some of what Rob talked about on solving these, but actually how the debt's going to impact our generation. So marrying later in life, lower chances of, job growth, and not only that, but what your income will be throughout your life, a later mortgage. So we not only talk about how to solve that, but how does it directly impact our generation? Because I think whether we're talking about the healthcare system or whatever it is, really that issue of the debt's going to directly impact our generation. So Slay the Beast is a great product to have young people get out on their campuses.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. I know we didn't have very much time, but time flies by when you're talking about interesting things. But anyway, people can find out more at heritage.org.
That's right.
Right? Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Malia.
This has been News Behind the News. Aloha.